This video talks you through completing tabs 3, 3A and 3B in the Adapt to Survive worksheet. These have written guides corresponding in sections 3.3 and 3.4 of Adapt to Survive. Before using the information that you've completed in tabs 1, risk, and 2, impacts, to prioritise the impacts that you want to address, tab 3, existing resilience checklist, prompts you to establish adaptation techniques you may already be carrying out by presenting you with a list of site and operational features here in column C that can be considered as adaptation techniques. The following two tabs, 3A, equipment and supplies, and 3B, business impact analysis, are based on the business impact analysis template provided by NHS England, which aim to guide you through the areas of operations and services that can be disrupted by an emergency in linking these to thinking about impacts and adaptation. If we look at tab 3 first, the first thing we'll do after reading through some of these techniques is to fill in which team or individual is most likely to be responsible for each technique. This has been left up to you as the responsibility for many of these techniques will vary greatly from trust to trust. Table 4 in section 3.3 of Adapt to Survive and this drop-down list here give you some suggestions. This will eventually help you create a detailed action plan, and also if you're only able to carry out adaptation planning for a specific department or team within your trust, this will allow you to filter the team/individual responsible column to view only the techniques that you have control over. This may have already been completed by you by a different team member, and they'll therefore help you do that as well. The categories in column B are one method of grouping techniques together, which will help you again with planning in later tabs. Feel free to change these categories so they're most helpful to you, or add categories, and make sure that you should add categories to any extra adaptation techniques you write at the bottom of this table. The categories given here as options in the drop-down include building and equipment upgrades, data collection, outdoor facilities, planning, policies and governance. Have a look at the techniques listed here in column C and mark which of them you may already have in place. You do this in column D here, just typing Y for yes and N for no. And then in column E, add as much detail as possible about any adaptation techniques you already have in place, like this one's got some free text here. This will help you with reporting, evaluating progress later, or even sharing best practice with other trusts or wider partners if they're asking what techniques you've got in place. You can have all that information here. Then, if you haven't got something in place, you can add notes on why a technique's not been applied in column F here. Again, free text, so you can type whatever you want. This won't always be necessary, but it's most useful when used to highlight specific barriers you'd like to address now or in the future, or help you see patterns about which barriers are coming up quite a lot. Example barriers could be a proposal has been rejected by a senior team, it's too expensive right now, there's no team who's specifically responsible for the delivery of that kind of thing. You can even indicate whether the barriers here are things that could theoretically be overcome or not. Cost is something, for example, that could probably be overcome. As is having somebody responsible for the delivery of that sort of thing, whereas something like a survey having already been carried out that shows that a particular infrastructure installation would be unsuitable for your building is something that's less likely to be overcome, for example. Finally, you can use tab 2, impacts, to add notes in column G here on which impacts are addressed by the adaptation techniques listed here. So you can use by copying and pasting or typing in the scenarios in column B here in tab 2, or the actual impacts in column C here, and add these to this folder here. Try and do this for as many techniques as you can, not only those that you've already carried out, as it will help you prioritise techniques in your action plan later if you know what impacts are addressed by the different techniques. As was mentioned with tab 2 in the previous video, tab 3 does attempt to incorporate as many areas of the healthcare system as possible, but it might not be comprehensive, so it's recommended you supplement the list with your own thoughts. The next two tabs, 3A, equipment and supplies, and 3B, business impact analysis, as already mentioned, are based on the business impact analysis template. This aims to guide you through areas of operations and services that can be disrupted by an emergency, but these tabs expand on those considerations to get you to think about how you not only prepare for emergencies, but how you may also adapt to prevent severe weather impacting your services to the point of an emergency in the first place. So looking at areas of your operations and services that are at risk can also be used to identify how resilient they are, which is actually something that you should be including in your business continuity planning now as part of the Net Zero Carbon Delivery Plan. The appendix in Adapt to Survive talks a bit more about requirements and how they link within the NHS more broadly, and within central government's requirements and how this links to adaptation. As well as tabs 3A and 3B, you can also look at your existing business impact risk assessment and your emergency planning documents to see what actions are included in there to minimise impacts from severe weather, to give you some ideas of other adaptation techniques you'd like to include in tab 3. Also note that your procurement teams might have information on equipment and supplies needed to complete these next sections. So for tab 3A, equipment and supplies, look at the equipment and supplies listed here in column A, determine whether you're happy with the different equipments that are included, whether you feel this is thorough, whether it's relevant to you, and then answer as many questions as you can in the table. This might help you identify potential impacts you'd like to add to column C that you feel are missing in tab 2. Column C in tab 2, and any extra adaptation techniques you'd like to include in column B in tab 3 as well. Then consider the questions in 3B to potentially identify extra potential impacts as well and potential adaptation techniques. So these look at the things that you've already logged down in section 3A. So for example, looking at clinical waste disposal, you've talked about already here, whether or not where they're located, whether they're in energy intensive systems that do clinical waste disposal, who's responsible for these things, and then looking at here, the business impact analysis section, then prompts you to ask more questions as to how you might adapt to prevent those things being an issue. For example, are the equipments in areas resilient to severe weather? Are they in the same area or spread out so that you can still carry out clinical waste if some are damaged or prevented to be accessed? And are staff trained to deal with these sorts of things? Finally then, when this is done, as was done with tab 2, you can scroll to the very bottom of the table in tab 3, as so, and include an extra column as you wish in free text. Clicking enter and then starting to do another one adds another section to the table as well.